My mom sat me down and said they could not afford my son's birthday this year, and I nodded and said nothing until 6 days later when I saw exactly where every dollar they said they did not have had actually gone. My son turned 8 on a Thursday and my parents did not come. Not because they were sick. Not because of distance. They lived 19 minutes away, and they did not come because 3 weeks before the birthday my mother had sat across from me at my kitchen table with her hands folded and told me they were in a difficult financial period and simply could not contribute to the celebration this year. She used the word contribute. Like his birthday was a fundraiser. I nodded. I told her I understood. I made the birthday happen the way I always made things happen, on my own, with the specific focused competence of a woman who has been making things happen on her own for long enough that the muscle is permanent now. I ordered the cake from the bakery my son loved. I invited his friends. I hung the streamers he had specifically requested, blue and silver, and I watched him run through the backyard with 7 other 8-year-olds, and I took the pictures and I ate the cake and I smiled for the entire 4 hours with the practiced ease of someone who has learned to smile through most things. My parents sent a card. Inside the card was a gift card for $12. I put it on the refrigerator with the magnet shaped like a pineapple my son had picked out at the farmer's market, and I looked at it for a moment, and then I made dinner and gave my son his bath and put him to bed and sat on the couch in the quiet. 6 days later I saw the photos. My name is Ren. I am 34 years old. My son's name is Oliver, and he is the reason I get up in the morning in the most literal and also the most profound sense. I have been raising him alone since he was 2, since his father and I agreed that we had become 2 people who were better at being apart than together, and the agreement had been correct and the execution had been clean, and Oliver has 2 parents who show up for him consistently and separately, and that is enough. What Oliver also has, or what I believed he had until the birthday situation clarified things, were grandparents. My parents, Franklin and Diane, had been present in the standard grandparent way for the first 6 years of Oliver's life. Not extraordinary. Not the grandparents who drive 4 hours for a school play or who memorize every interest and arrive with perfectly targeted gifts. The standard version. Birthday acknowledgments, Christmas presents, the occasional Sunday dinner, the periodic visit that Oliver accepted with the mild enthusiasm of a child who likes his grandparents well enough, and does not require them to be exceptional. I had accepted this. The standard version was sufficient. I had not needed them to be extraordinary. I had needed them to show up for a birthday cake. They had sent $12. The photos appeared on my cousin Bet's social media on a Tuesday. 6 days after Oliver's birthday. 6 days after the card with $12 and the word contribute and the careful explanation of the difficult financial period. Bet had tagged my mother in the photos. The photos were from a weekend trip. A resort 2 hours outside the city, the kind with a specific visual language of money being spent on aesthetics, the lighting and the linens, and the specific quality of a place that does not post prices on the menu. My parents in the photos. My father with a glass of something on a terrace. My mother in a chair by a pool that had the particular blue of water that is maintained rather than natural. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at my phone. I counted the photos. 14. A full weekend documented. I do not know yet what the weekend had cost. I did not need to know what the weekend had cost. I knew what the weekend was. The weekend was the difficult financial period made visible. The difficult financial period had a terrace and a pool and whatever was in my father's glass, and it had happened the weekend before Oliver's birthday. My mother had sat at my kitchen table with her hands folded 6 days before this weekend. I put my phone face down on the table. I sat there for a while. Then I picked it back up, and I did exactly what you do when you need to understand something completely before you say anything about it. I started looking. The looking took 4 days. Not investigative looking. I was not a detective, and I had no access to my parents' accounts, and I was not going to do anything that required pretending I had not seen the photos. What I had was Bet, who had tagged my mother innocently and who called me the day after the photos posted with the voice of someone who had seen something on their own screen and suddenly understood what they had done. Ren, Bet told me. I just saw that you were not tagged. I didn't think. I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong, I told her. The photos, she continued. I didn't know they had gone away that weekend. I assumed you knew. When did they book it? I asked. A pause. It was Diane's birthday gift from your dad. He planned it weeks ago. Maybe 6 weeks. 6 weeks ago. Which was 2 weeks before my mother sat at my kitchen table and told me about the difficult financial period. How long did they stay? I asked. 3 nights, Bet told me. Thursday through Sunday. Thursday through Sunday. Oliver's birthday was the Thursday after they came home. I thanked Bet. I ended the call. I sat in the specific stillness of someone who has received the final piece of a picture and is looking at the completed image for the first time. The resort had a website. I am not going to reproduce what things cost because the specific numbers are not the point. What the website communicated, through the language of places that do not post prices because the posting of prices implies that price is a consideration worth having, was that a 3-night stay for 2 people on a weekend was a specific category of expenditure. It was not the category of people who could not afford a birthday cake. I looked at the website for a while. I looked at the photos on Bet's page. I looked at the card on my refrigerator with the magnet shaped like a pineapple and the $12 gift card inside. I did not call my mother that day. I did not call her the next day either. I went to work and I picked up Oliver from school and I made dinner and I helped him with his homework and I put him to bed and I sat on the couch and I thought about what I was actually dealing with. This was not a money problem. Money problems were real and I had had them and I understood them, and they did not look like a 3-night resort weekend 6 days before a child's birthday. Money problems looked like transferring from savings and eating pasta twice a week and telling your daughter honestly that this year was tight and you were sorry. This was a choice problem. My parents had chosen. They had chosen the resort and they had chosen the terrace and the pool and the lighting and the linens, and they had also chosen the kitchen table conversation and the hands folded and the contribute and the $12 in a card. They had made both of those choices in the same month. I sat with that for 4 days. Then I called my mother. She answered with the warmth she always deployed, the specific brightness of Diane answering a call from her daughter, and I let her get through the greeting and then I told her I needed to ask her something. A brief pause. The pause of someone recalibrating. I asked her about the resort. The silence that followed was the specific silence of someone who has been caught in a thing and is rapidly moving through the available positions. She told me it had been planned months ago. That it was a special occasion. That the costs had been managed separately from the regular budget. I let her finish. You sat at my kitchen table, I told her. 3 weeks before Oliver's birthday. You told me you were in a difficult financial period and could not contribute to his celebration. 6 days after his birthday you were at a resort. Another silence. It was already booked, she replied. We couldn't cancel without losing the deposit. I looked at the refrigerator. The pineapple magnet. The $12 card. The deposit on a resort, I told her, was more important than your grandson's birthday. The silence went longer. That's not fair, she replied. Oliver asked me why you didn't come, I told her. He is 8 years old and he asked me where you were. The line went very quiet. What did you tell him, she asked. I thought about what I had told him. That Grandma and Grandpa were sorry they couldn't make it. That they sent a gift. That they loved him. I told him you sent a gift, I replied. My mother was quiet. I'm going to need some time before we talk again, I told her. I need to figure out what I want to say and I need it to be the right thing rather than the current thing. I ended the call. I sat on my couch and looked at the ceiling and thought about Oliver at the kitchen table opening the card and finding $12 and the specific face he had made, not disappointed exactly, more confused, the face of a child doing arithmetic that does not resolve. He had put the gift card in his pocket and gone back to his friends. 8 years old and already managing his own expectations. I had taught him that without meaning to. I did not contact my parents for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks I thought about the pattern rather than the incident. One incident is an incident. A pattern is information. I thought about Oliver's 6th birthday, when my parents had arrived an hour late because my father had lost track of time watching something and my mother had not reminded him, and they had walked in during the cake portion and my mother had said they hadn't missed much. I thought about the school play in February when Oliver had a speaking part and I had texted both of them the date 3 weeks in advance and the week before and the day before and they had not come and my mother had called afterward to ask how it went. I thought about Christmas 2 years ago when Oliver had specifically asked for one thing and I had told my parents what it was in October, and they had given him something else entirely, and when I mentioned it my mother had said children needed to learn not to expect specific things. None of these things alone were the thing. All of them together were the thing. And the resort was the thing made visible and specific and documented in 14 photographs on Bet's social media page. On the 14th day I called my mother back. She answered with a different quality than the brightness. The quality of someone who has been waiting for a call and has used the waiting to prepare. I did not let her use the preparation. I told her I had been thinking about the pattern. Not just the birthday. The play in February. The 6th birthday. Christmas 2 years ago. The consistent gap between what Oliver needed from them and what they showed up with. My mother listened. I could hear her breathing. We love Oliver, she told me when I finished. I know you do, I replied. That's not the question. The question is what love looks like in practice. We can't always be there for everything, she replied. You can't be there for anything, I told her. That's different. A pause. That's not true. Oliver asked me where you were on his birthday, I replied. He is 8. He noticed. The line was quiet. What do you want from us? She asked. And I had been thinking about this question for 2 weeks. I had been building the answer carefully, not from anger, not from the specific heat of the photos on Bet's page, but from the cold clarity of someone who has looked at a pattern long enough to understand its shape. I told her. Not everything. Not a list of demands. Something more specific and more honest than that. I want Oliver to be a priority, I told her. Not the only priority. Not every moment. But when you are deciding how to spend a weekend and his birthday is 6 days later, I want him to be in the calculation. My mother was quiet. And I want honesty, I continued. If you can't come to something, tell me the real reason. Don't sit at my kitchen table and tell me about a difficult financial period when you have a resort weekend already booked. The quiet stretched. You saw the photos, she told me. Bet posted them, I replied. She didn't know. Another silence. I should have told you the truth, she replied finally. It was not an apology exactly. It was the acknowledgement of a woman who has been caught in the specific architecture of a story she told herself and has run out of room to maintain it. Yes, I told her. You should have. We stayed on the phone for a while longer and ended the call with something that was not resolution and was not nothing. A beginning of something more honest than what we had been doing. I put my phone down and went to find Oliver, who was in his room building something complicated with his construction set. He looked up when I came in. Mom, he told me, turning back to his construction. Can you pass the long blue piece? I found the long blue piece and handed it over and sat on the floor next to him and watched him build and thought about what it meant to be in the calculation. To be the priority. To be the thing someone rearranges their weekend around rather than the thing that gets $12 in a card. Oliver did not know I was thinking about any of this. He was building something and he needed the long blue piece and I had given it to him and that was the whole transaction and it was sufficient. I was going to make sure more transactions were sufficient from now on. My father called on a Thursday. Not my mother. My father, which was itself significant because Franklin's calls were rare and purposeful, a man who did not pick up the phone without a specific reason. His voice had the quality of someone who has been in a conversation with his wife and has decided that a separate conversation with his daughter is also necessary. He told me he had been thinking. I waited. He told me that Diane had told him about our conversation. That he had sat with it for several days. That he had his own things to say and had not wanted to say them through Diane. I respected this and told him so. He was quiet for a moment and then he told me something I had not expected. He told me that he had not known about the kitchen table conversation. He had not known my mother had sat across from me and told me about the difficult financial period. He had not known she had said they could not contribute to Oliver's birthday. He had known about the resort. It had been his gift to her. He had planned it and he had not thought to connect it to Oliver's birthday in the calculation because the calculation, in his mind, had been that Diane would handle the birthday and he would handle the anniversary trip and the two things were separate. He had not known they were not separate. He had not known because Diane had not told him what she had said to me. I sat with that. She told me there wasn't money for the birthday, I told him. While the resort was already booked. He was quiet for a long time. I see, he replied. 2 words. But the 2 words had the weight of a man who has just had 2 separate pictures shown to him simultaneously and understood for the first time that they were the same picture. I'm sorry, Ren, he told me. For the birthday. For not being there. For not making sure it was handled. I thought about the standard version of grandparenting that I had accepted for 6 years. The sufficient version. The version that showed up well enough and did not require excellence. I don't need excellence, Dad, I told him. I need Oliver to be in the calculation. I understand that now, he replied. I believed him. Partially. Enough to continue the conversation. My mother and I had 3 more conversations over the following month. The first was careful, both of us navigating the new territory of honesty that the birthday situation had created, and it was stilted and effortful and necessary. The second was better. She asked about Oliver's current interests, his construction sets, and his recent obsession with a specific series of books, and the asking had the quality of someone who has decided to pay attention rather than assume they already know. The third was the hardest. She called on a Sunday evening and her voice had the quality of a woman who has been sitting with something for a month and has decided to say it directly rather than carry it. She told me she had been managing resources for a long time in ways that were not transparent. Not just with me. With Franklin. With the way money moved in their household and who knew what about it. She told me this without extensive detail because the detail was not mine to have, but the pattern was, and the pattern had produced the kitchen table conversation, and she understood that now. I was embarrassed, she told me. About the trip. About the timing. And instead of being honest, I made it into a different story. I looked at the pineapple magnet on the refrigerator. The $12 gift card was gone now, spent by Oliver on a specific set of collector cards he had been wanting, the full transaction completed with the focused satisfaction of a child spending his own money. I know, I told her. I made your son the casualty of my embarrassment, she continued. He is 8 years old and I sent him $12 because I did not want to admit the truth. I let that sit. It was the most honest thing my mother had said to me in years. Not perfectly honest. Not the full accounting. But a real thing, said directly, without the management layer. Thank you for saying that, I told her. We talked for a while longer and said goodbye, and I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about Oliver at the school play in February and Christmas 2 years ago and the 6th birthday and the way he had put the gift card in his pocket and gone back to his friends. 8 years old and already managing. I was going to make sure he did not have to manage quite so much. Oliver's school had a grandparents' event in the spring. A morning thing, an hour, the children presenting projects they had made about their families. Oliver had made a poster with photographs and small drawings and the specific earnest care of a child who wants the thing to be good. I had told my parents about it 6 weeks in advance. Then 4 weeks. Then 2 weeks. Then the week before. My father called me the night before and confirmed they would be there. They were there. Not late. Not during the cake equivalent of the event. There, in the school's multipurpose room at 9 in the morning, my mother in a green jacket I had not seen before and my father with his reading glasses pushed up on his head the way he wore them when he was planning to look at something carefully. Oliver saw them from across the room and his face did the thing children's faces do when something exceeds what they had let themselves hope for. He ran. Not walking. Running. The full body commitment of a child who has recalibrated an expectation upward in real time and is moving toward the new information as fast as his legs will carry him. I stood near the door and watched my father catch him and my mother lean in and the three of them in the middle of the school multipurpose room and Oliver's voice carrying back to me, high and clear and entirely happy. I looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then I looked back at them. My mother looked up and found me across the room and her face had the expression of a woman who understands what she almost missed and has been given the specific mercy of not having missed it today. I nodded once. She nodded back. Oliver pulled them toward his poster and began explaining it with both hands and my parents looked at it with the attention of people who have decided to be present and are practicing what that looks like. It was not transformed. I want to be honest about that. One school event does not transform a pattern. One honest conversation does not rebuild what 6 years of the standard version constructed. But it was real. It was them in a room they had not always shown up for. It was Oliver running. That was enough for that morning. I think about the resort photos sometimes. Not with the heat of the first seeing. With the cooler understanding of someone who has done the work of moving from reaction to decision. My mother had been embarrassed and had managed the embarrassment by constructing a story, and the story had required my son to receive $12 and a card on his 8th birthday while she sat by a pool 48 hours later. The story had not survived the photos. Stories that require other people's diminishment never survive the photos. What I have now is something more accurate and less comfortable than what I had before. A relationship with my parents that does not run on the version of events they would prefer and runs instead on what is actually happening and what is actually needed. It requires more maintenance than the previous version. It requires me to say things I would previously have let go. It requires them to hear things they would previously have explained away. It is harder. It is also the only version worth having because the previous version had produced a child who was already managing his expectations at 8 years old, and that is the one outcome I am not willing to accept. Oliver deserves grandparents who show up. Not perfect ones. Not extraordinary ones. Just ones who are in the calculation. The pineapple magnet is still on the refrigerator. I kept it there after the gift card was spent because Oliver picked it out at the farmer's market and it makes him happy, and the refrigerator is his domain as much as mine, and what goes on it is his business. But sometimes I look at it and I think about my mother's hands folded on my kitchen table. The word contribute. The difficult financial period. And I think about 14 photos on Bet's page. And I think about the specific face Oliver made when he opened the card, not disappointed, just confused, the arithmetic not resolving. He put the gift card in his pocket and went back to his friends. He did not make it a thing. He was 8 years old and he did not make it a thing because he had already learned not to make things out of things that did not resolve. I made it a thing. I made it a thing because he was too young to know that he should. Someone has to be the person who refuses to let the arithmetic stay unresolved. In this family, until something changes, that person is me. And I am not putting the pineapple magnet away. When someone tells you they cannot afford your child, check the calendar. Check the bookings. Check the resort website. And then make the call from the place of someone who has seen the photos and is done accepting the story that requires your child to be the casualty of someone else's embarrassment. 8 years old is too young to manage expectations. That is your job. Do it.